Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. I'm going to tell you 4 things about today's guest, but only 3 are true. Nardos Osterhart is a wife and mother of 7. She was born in Eritrea, but grew up in Oklahoma. She spends her days working as a nursing supervisor. And on the weekends, she tells jokes at area comedy clubs. I can't wait for this conversation. Nardos, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here.
You bet. So, for all of those people feeling suspenseful, like who is this woman and what does she do and what's the one lie in all this pack? So, what don't you do among all of these things?
Well, I don't have 7 children.
Okay, then.
Yes,
So,
but the rest is true. I am a nurse by trade. These days I'm in hospital administration. I work for Spectrum Health Blodgett Hospital. I am a wife. I've been married for 11 years, so that too is true. I have 2 children, and I do stand-up comedy on the side.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit to the beginning.
Okay.
So you were in Eritrea, and your father worked for the government, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So I was actually born in Lagos, Nigeria, just to clarify. And my parents were just kind of star-crossed lovers because my mother is from Ethiopia and my father is from Eritrea. And they're neighboring countries. Right. And they were married, and in about, 1974, they were both married, living together, and had 2 children at the time, and in Ethiopia at the time. And that is when, a military coup had occurred, and the name of that coup was known as the Derg, and they had overthrown the monarchy that had been in place for thousands of years prior. So that kind of started a lot of things in terms of pieces moving, so that my father was kind of suddenly focused on a sense of urgency to get out of Africa and move us to the United States, ideally, as a goal.
So of all the places in the United States, how does one pick Oklahoma?
Goodness, that's a great question. A lot of people ask that. You know, we had a few opportunities, and before we actually came to the United States, we were living in Germany at the time. It was 1980, and having been there for a couple of years, my father was still aspiring to gain political asylum to come to the United States. We were associated with a Protestant church in Germany, and they had a few sister churches that they were associated with in the United States, one of them being in Oklahoma. And then my father also was looking for some other opportunities in terms of where would be the best place for us to relocate if we did get that asylum. And he had a few relatives that had already moved ahead of us. So he had a cousin that was living in Oklahoma, and he had a few aunts that were living in Washington, D.C., and then there was also a relative that was even more distant and he didn't know so well in Rhode Island. Okay. So those were kind of the 3 states he had in mind in terms of where to go. I think the connection with the church was helpful and seen as kind of an advantage because we knew that there would be additional support that way.
So now, what people may not know is that part of Africa is actually very mixed religiously, and Eritrea is roughly 50-50 Christian-Muslim.
That's correct.
So did your family grow up Christian then?
Christian,
okay.
Yes. Kind of, Orthodox Christian is what I would say. When people relocate from Ethiopia to America, they typically find themselves most closely aligned with Greek Orthodox faith.
Okay.
And so unless you're in one of the major cities in America like Dallas or Washington, D.C., you won't necessarily find enough support to have your own Ethiopian Orthodox church, so most people are Greek Orthodox.
Okay, okay, good. So what was it like getting transplanted now? And how old were you at the time you were in elementary?
I was 5 when we came to the U.S.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So do you remember those early days?
Sure do,
okay.
Yeah. It was...
fun or struggle?
Struggle, total struggle, because, well, It wasn't helped by the fact that my parents got a divorce within a year of having moved.
There's some turmoil.
Yeah, so clearly they were having problems, and the relationship was on the rocks. So my mom left and moved to Dallas, Texas, which is about 3 hours south of Oklahoma. And they had to work out, you know, custody and opportunities to see the children, and all of that made it more complicated.
Sure, sure. So do you remember cultural moments like we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto?
Yeah, I actually do. I think, you know, those things kind of pop up from time to time. Like, for example, just the idea of like, and I have a joke about this, but just the idea of like being in school and starting off on your first day and thinking, okay, everything is pretty good here, you know, we're getting acclimated. And then you show up on the second day and everybody has a new outfit. You know, you think about how, you know, as Africans, you just have fewer resources. So that was just one thing that I look back on and think about, like, the wardrobes here are just so much more lavish than what we're used to. And the resources and just food, you know, getting accustomed to American food. We weren't used to that at all.
Sure.
English language too was just challenging.
Sure. How racially diverse was your school?
In Oklahoma, not diverse at all.
Okay.
I would say probably 5%.
Okay.
African American, and then maybe the rest was Hispanic.
So did people try to lump you with a certain group?
Or white. I'm sorry, the majority was white, and
Sure.
then there was a small minority population of Hispanic Americans. What was your question?
Did people try to lump you with other groups? Because clearly,
yeah, it's hard to fit in, right?
Eritreans are like, who are these people? Right?
Yep. So, you know, African Americans, you know, welcomed us, and that seemed like a really natural fit. But my father was really focused on us assimilating into American culture quickly and just pretty exclusively. And you couldn't help but find yourself in the company of mostly white people. So that's kind of who also embraced us and, you know, was able to support us pretty evenly.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So how does a person, now did you go to high school in Oklahoma? Okay.
Yep. Elementary school, middle school, high school, college.
So how do you end up, college, how do you end up in Michigan from all that distance?
Oh, I met a boy. So I fell in love at the University of Oklahoma, which is in Norman, Oklahoma, and I had been going to school pursuing my bachelor's degree in social work for about 3.5, 4 years. And I'd known of this young man for a long time, and at that time I was transitioning and attending Catholic church on campus just through friends who were also involved with the Catholic faith. And he was cradle Catholic, had always, you know, gone to Catholic church. But interestingly enough, he went to school and then stopped going. So I didn't know him, you know, thinking, you would have thought that I would have known him well just because we're both Catholics, but he never went to church. So for 4 years, we never really knew who the other person was. And then finally, he showed up at church one day, and then we got to know each other that way.
So you have this really interesting, it's more than just an interest in stand-up comedy, but you got into this in a really interesting way. Can you talk through what you thought was professional development?
That's true. A few years ago, I'd say probably 4 years ago now, I had an end-of-year evaluation with my boss, and she had given me a pretty favorable review, but asked me, you know, what is it more that you could be doing to kind of grow yourself and kind of increase your skills? And I thought about some of the anxiety that I felt whenever it was my turn to, you know, present to a larger group. And I talked to her about public speaking, and I was looking for opportunities to kind of strengthen that. And she had suggested that I connect with a few people in leadership that work within the organization that do really well with public speaking. And that just felt a little kind of difficult in terms of like access or just willingness to reach out to those people.
Because of your sort of position, you were uncomfortable reaching out?
Yes, and I didn't even really know how interviewing those people would have necessarily helped me get better at it.
Because sometimes you just have to get out there and do it.
Correct. Yeah. And for some people, it's just kind of an innate skill. So I thought, if they're just naturally good at it, I don't know that it'll benefit me to talk to them. And I'm sure I was just kind of also a little afraid of, like you said, making the leap in terms of roles. So then I looked into just different opportunities, Alan, in terms of what else is out there. And I did some online searches, and I found Toastmasters was an opportunity.
Very traditional route.
Exactly. And then I'd also thought about maybe getting into some improv or, local drama or theater.
There's Dale Carnegie.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So there were a lot of different ways to do that. But none of them seemed too convenient for me. At the time I was pursuing an online master's degree.
Okay.
And I was also raising, 2 young girls and busy with my full-time job and hoping to be a really good wife at the same time. So in terms of making a break during the day to spend time to, work on that, I just didn't see a way to fit it in. And then I just remembered going to a local comedy club, Dr. Grin's in the Bob, downtown here in Grand Rapids, and seeing people get up every now and then and do these open mics. And I thought, they're not always that good. And I give them a lot of credit, for the courage that they have. If someone's willing to, take the time to get up on stage and try to make people laugh for a few minutes, I think that would demonstrate some competence, with regards to
So do you
speaking
remember your
publicly.
first open mic?
I do. It was actually October 31st. It was Halloween.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was back in 2000.
And correspondingly, it
11.
was scary.
Yes, absolutely. And I showed up early. I was really nervous, and my husband went to support me. So the two of us were sitting, waiting, connecting with the person who was running the show. And then I got up eventually and did my material, and it didn't kill me. I did.
You didn't die.
I did a decent job. I made a few people laugh, and I was nervous, but I was kind of proud of myself at the same time.
Awesome, awesome. So how long have you been doing this? This is several years now.
Now it's 3 years.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So what have you learned from this?
Wow, I have learned that people generally want to see you do well. And I remember thinking when I was presenting within, the different roles that I had throughout my career, I always had this feeling like people were waiting for me to fail or do something stupid in terms of my presentation. But when you get up on stage and you've got, those moments of quiet or that opportunity to start your story and then hopefully end with, a laugh, people are uncomfortable if you're not doing well. They want you to do well.
They're cheering for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that was one of the biggest lessons, is that people don't necessarily want to see you fail. They want you to do well.
So there's actually a direct application to this and your success at work.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of relaxed me a bit.
So for all the supervisors and human resources managers watching us right now, this may be a whole new avenue for them to suggest next time annual job performance reviews come up.
Hey, it's not a bad idea. It worked for me.
Yeah, awesome, awesome.
Yep.
So we need to wrap up, but last question, how do you define belonging? How do you know that someplace works for you and yeah, I fit in here?
I think it's just the comfort level that I feel in terms of stepping into something new. I think that given kind of my situation or my personality or who I am just naturally as a person, I'm used to kind of finding a way to fit in. So in terms of belonging, I think you kind of have to carve out that sense of comfort for yourself and try to associate yourself with other people based on what similarities exist. So, I don't expect to find other Ethiopian people everywhere I go. I expect to find welcoming, approachable, relaxed, considerate people. And so those are the things that help me feel like as if I belong, because I use that as ways to make other people feel like they belong.
Okay, awesome, awesome. We truly have to wrap up, but last question, how do people catch your show?
Oh, sure. I am a fill-in host at Dr. Grin's in the Bob downtown, so there are times that
Downtown Grand Rapids, and the Bob stands for?
The big old building.
Big old building, great.
So that information, I guess if people were to Facebook friend me, they would find out when I'm doing that.
Put their website on the screen too.
Absolutely. So. And then I also just get different opportunities just through other friends and networking. Okay. So.
Do you have a Nardos is Funny Facebook page?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I just have my Nardos Osterhart Facebook page.
Okay, so people can find you one way or the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been a real delight talking with you. Thanks so much for coming by.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks.
For folks back home, stay tuned. We'll be coming back in just a moment to talk a little bit about American culture, American slang, and a little bit of humor. I'm sure you're going to like today's story. It's simple, it's useful, and it's something that most English learners need more of. What's that, you say? Well, we're talking about contractions. They're the combination of two words into one to make speech smoother and more efficient. If you're an English learner, perhaps you've been told not to use contractions in your speech. Maybe the teachers in your home country told you that they're a lazy or sloppy way of speaking. The opposite is actually true. Native speakers use contractions all the time. It combines shorter and less important English words so that your speech will flow more easily. When native speakers hear contractions, they don't analyze them directly, but they feel them in the conversation and perceive it as friendly and normal. On the other hand, if you overpronounce English phrases, I will go with you, instead of I'll go with you. If you pronounce every syllable, we were not ready, instead of we weren't ready, you will sound like a computer or a robot instead of a real person. Even worse, you will sound like you're angry and choosing to emphasize every word. So, let's all practice using contractions. It's the right thing to do. Don't you agree?
I was at a party recently. I met a lot of new people. I introduced myself to one guy, and he said, "Your name's Nardos?" God, that's unusual. "Can I ask you what the origin is?" And I said, "Sure, I'm from Africa." And he said, "Hey, I have a friend from Africa. Do you know Sekou Matazenga?" And I said, you know that Africa isn't the high school from Glee, right? It didn't graduate 30 seniors last spring because it's a continent. It's the second largest of 7 in the entire world. Africa is so big, the governments there don't even track people through a census anymore. Every year they write the same thing on their sheets. Too many people. I don't know your stupid friend.